Good evening, church. I know that our Wednesday night lessons have been a little bit different lately. Normally we would all be in the sanctuary together, and so watching them online has been an adjustment. I want to teach on this topic, joy cometh in the morning. I feel like there's a little bit of a stigma that runs through the church today, and that stigma is this. As a Christian, we are expected to always hold our chin up high while smiling, even though we may be hurting on the inside. It has been said before that a Christian should always be happy. In theory, that sounds great, and I will touch on the fact that we can have true joy in the Lord, and we don't have to walk around all day with a woe is me attitude. But the reality of it is that we are human and we have emotions, and there will be days where we feel sorrow, pain, anguish, frustration, and just all of those negative feelings. Sometimes we are under the impression that if someone asks us how we are doing, we have to smile and say something along the lines of, "Oh, I'm just so blessed." And that's not wrong, because we are a blessed people. When I look back over my life, I can see the blessings that the Lord has bestowed upon me. Yes, I've had some hard times. Yes, I have mourned. Yes, I have gone through periods where I was depressed. Yes, I have had lows. But God has blessed me abundantly. I have family that loves me, friends that I can rely on, a devoted husband who provides for, leads, teaches, and encourages our family, a healthy son, a daughter on the way, food to eat, a car to drive, a roof on my head, and so much more. I am blessed. But sometimes that's not the answer to the question that is being asked. Sometimes we feel like we have to put on a show to those around us so that our fellow brothers and sisters don't find out that, we received some hard news from the doctor, or we didn't get the promotion that we deserved, and so on. Yet, I know that if we were really to think about it, we would realize that hiding the fact that we occasionally feel frustrated and things aren't always as peachy as we say they are isn't really doing anyone any good. And here's what I mean by that, and Sister Deanna actually touched on it a little bit a few weeks ago when she was leading service on a Sunday morning. As Christians, we can walk through life and never let anyone around us know that we have something that we are struggling with, or you've suffered a miscarriage, or you're still hurting over the loss of a loved one, and that can give off the vibe that Christians never go through hard times and that life is a walk in the park. It could lead your coworker to wonder why they have to go through trying times when sister or brother so-and-so never has anything going on in their life other than good things. But I know that if I turn to the Bible, there are countless passages that prove the opposite. Think about Job and everything that he went through, or Joseph and how it seemed like he just couldn't catch a break, or David and some of the Psalms that he wrote where you can feel what he was feeling when he wrote those Psalms. What I'm trying to say is that inevitably we will have days when we are struggling, days when we hurt, and pretending like those days have not happened, do not happen, and will not happen doesn't do anyone a favor. Rather, what we should be able to do is look at our child and say, yes, we are hurting because of this thing that's going on, but we know that it's going to be okay, and we know that we can and will have God's peace in this circumstance. Or we should be able to go to work and say something along the lines of, my weekend wasn't as good as I thought it would be. On Friday, I received some hard news from the doctor, and if I'm honest, I'm working through it. But I know that God is with me every step of the way, and I've already felt his hand encouraging me. How much more of an impact can we make if we're willing to be a little bit vulnerable and let others know that we are human, but God is still God no matter what. And I want to take a look at one psalm. There are countless passages that I could have chosen from, but Psalm 13 depicts exactly what I'm trying to portray in this lesson. So verses 1 and 2 say, "How long wilt thou forget me, O Lord? Forever? How long wilt thou hide thy face from me? How long shall I take counsel in my soul, having sorrow in my heart daily? How long shall mine enemy be exalted over me?" Man, those two verses alone are pretty depressing. But if we are all honest, we would say that we have felt that way one time or another. Think about a time when you were at a really low point. Did you have those same kind of thoughts? I would be willing to bet money, even though we don't bet money, that you have thought something similar. The days when you don't know what else to say other than, "God, I don't know where you are right now. It feels like you are so far away, and that this sorrow that I'm feeling is going to last forever." And that brings to mind another thing, is that sometimes I think it's hard for us to realize that we don't have to pretend like we can hide our thoughts or our emotions from God, because we can't. And so sometimes, we're at church, and I know that I've been guilty of this. I'm going through something, I'm just having a hard time, I'm struggling, and we're at church, and the time comes to pray during the service. We pray often throughout the service, but like the time of prayer, focus prayer, where we bring our knees to the Lord. And sometimes I feel like I can't always bring my need to the Lord the way I want to, because, maybe that will make me look like a bad person. And a good example of this would be, when I think about my family that's not saved, and how I desperately want them to be saved, and how, sometimes it's a struggle thinking about, well, God, why aren't they saved? And in reality, I know that God has already died on the cross for them. He's already done everything that he can do for them, and he's not going to force them to do anything they don't want to do, so it's not God's fault. But sometimes in my emotions, I feel like, well, God, why haven't you saved them? And sometimes I catch myself because I want to say that, but I don't want to say that because I don't want it to seem like I don't trust God. But in reality, he knows how I'm feeling. He knows if what's going through my mind is, well, God, I'm hurting right now. I want them to have what I have, so why haven't you saved them? And that's not really the question that I'm asking. The question that I'm trying to ask is more like, well, God, what can I do? Or the question I should be asking is, God, is there something that I can do that I'm not doing? Because I know you've already done everything that you can do. You already went to the cross for them. You care about them somehow more than I care about them. I know you love them. You don't want them to suffer or go to hell or anything like that. So I know that, and so I should be asking, well, God, what can I do? Sometimes in my emotions, I'm thinking, God, why aren't you doing something more? But I don't want to pray those things because I don't want it to seem like, oh, well, Alicia, she's on the leadership team and she's a licensed minister, but did you just hear what she prayed? But in reality, there's no point in hiding those things from God because he knows. And so sometimes I just need to suck it up and say, you know what, God, I am struggling with this. And God, I know that you care for them. But if I'm being honest, I wish that you would just save them, even though I know you want to. But anyway, so sometimes it's easy for us to feel the way David felt in those 2 verses, like, God, how long is this going to go on for? How long can it feel like this? How long am I going to struggle with this? God, how long is this health issue going to keep me down? How long am I going to, go through this financial crisis? And sometimes it seems like there's no end, and there's no point in hiding those feelings from God, because He knows everything. He knows when we're upset. He knows when we're angry. He knows when we're happy. So we don't have to hide those things from Him, but sometimes we feel like we can, even though we can't. But anyway, so this brings to mind one of my heroes, my grandma, my mom's mom, and she passed away almost 12 years ago now, which is kind of hard to believe, but throughout her life, she suffered a lot. She had one sister, and I know she had at least 4 brothers. She may have had 5. I never met any of them, so I know at least 4 brothers. But she lost all of her brothers at a very young age, as well as both of her parents. And I'm thankful that I haven't had to deal with the loss of a sibling or a parent, but I can imagine that it's not an easy thing to go through. I can't imagine losing one sibling, never mind 4 brothers. And then when my grandma was in her very early 40s, she lost a son in a car accident on Valentine's Day. So my Uncle Wally, and I remember hearing that he was actually on his way to go and see her. And instead of answering the door after she heard a knock to find her son, she was met with police officers that had come to tell her that she had lost her second-born son. And again, I'm thankful I haven't had to deal with this, but being a mother and knowing how much you care for your children, that I know that is the type of pain that just runs through every fiber of your being. That's the type of sorrow that weighs you down. It's the type of grief that just suffocates. And so she lost 4 brothers, she lost her parents, and now she lost a son, and she's only in her early 40s. And then after that, she actually ended up having a heart attack, and then 2 strokes throughout the rest of her life. And the last stroke that she had, it left her without the use of either of her legs or her arms. And so, I remember hearing my mom say something like, well, grandma can't even scratch her nose when it's itchy. And you don't think about that because your nose is itchy and you scratch it. It's just something you do. You don't really put too much thought into it. But then when you have someone you care about who can't do that, you think about how unpleasant that would be, how frustrating that would have to be sitting there or lying there and knowing like, oh man, my nose is just really itchy, I can't even scratch it. And so, that everything that happened to her also kind of seems like the type of thing that David is talking about in the beginning of this psalm. And I can imagine that there were some long nights when she felt as if the Lord had forgotten her. In verses 3 and 4, David goes on to say, "Consider and hear me, O Lord my God. Lighten mine eyes, lest I sleep the sleep of death, lest mine enemies say, I have prevailed against him, and those that trouble me rejoice when I am moved." But then in verse 5, something changes. David says, "But I have trusted in thy mercy, my heart shall rejoice in thy salvation." And in verse 6, "I will sing unto the Lord, because he hath dealt bountifully with me." I remember as a young girl watching my grandma intently. I remember hearing about the things that she went through throughout her life, but how it didn't match her attitude. While a lot of people would have grown bitter and some people grow bitter for less things than she went through. I remember hearing her pray and thank God. And, some people would have used this as an excuse to blame God for all of their problems, but she didn't do that. And, I'm not saying that she was perfect, because she wasn't. Sometimes growing up, you look at someone you hold, in high esteem, and you think, man, they can't do anything wrong. And then you realize they are human, so they're not perfect. So I know that she wasn't perfect. I know that, she made mistakes, and there were things that she could have done better. Maybe things that she shouldn't have done that she did do, things that she didn't do that she should have done, stuff like that. But through all of that, through all of the things that she went through, and knowing what she went through, something that really came to mind was, I can distinctly remember a song playing through her stereo that stood out to me. And the words to that song are, I am weak, but thou art strong. Jesus, keep me from all wrong. I'll be satisfied as long as I walk. Let me walk close to thee. And then the chorus goes, just a closer walk with thee. Grant it, Jesus, is my plea. Daily walking close to thee. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be. When my feeble life is o'er, time for me will be no more. Guide me gently, safely o'er to thy. When my feeble life is o'er, time for me will be no more. Guide me gently, safely o'er to thy kingdom shore, to thy shore. And so even after all of the things that she went through, she still longed for a closer walk with God. And, I actually have one of her old Bibles, which I believe I've brought to church before and used maybe in a ministry moment or something like that. And, I can see where she underlined passages, and I can see where she wrote in margins, and, I know that she was dedicated to the Lord. And so she suffered, but she knew that God's mercy was great. She had been through some trials, but she made it a point to cling to Him. And so what I'm trying to say is that even though there may be days when you're down, and that's okay, because we're human, we have to get to the point where we say that it's all right, because my heart rejoices in His salvation. And, again, she didn't pretend like she didn't go through any of the hard things. She didn't ignore the fact that she had suffered a little bit throughout her life. And that is important as well. I touched on it at the beginning, is we have, some of us in the church today, we have a little bit of a stigma where we feel like we can't let someone know that we're going through a trial, or that we have been through a trial. But I feel like our trials in a lot of ways can define us, and we can let that be in a bad way, or we can let it be in a good way. And pretending like we don't go through those things isn't going to do anyone any good. And Psalm 30 verse 5 says, for His anger endureth but a moment, in His favor is life. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. And that's what my title is today, is that joy cometh in the morning. And there's so many different Bible characters that we can look at where you can say, you know what, yeah, they wept and they went through some really hard things, but they also had joy in the Lord. And you find that joy through your relationship with Him. It's through having a prayer like that, the words of that song that I read, just a closer walk with thee. It's just, God, I want a closer walk with you. And when that is your desire, when that's the prayer that you pray every day, when that's the song that's in your heart, then it ends up being, it doesn't matter what I dealt with last night. It doesn't matter how long I've wept for. It doesn't matter what I'm weeping for, I know that your joy comes in the morning. And that, it's encouraging to me. It's an encouragement to those around us. Actually, within the last couple of months, I don't remember exactly when it was. I was at work, and my manager, she said something to me along the lines of, Alicia, I like your attitude about things. And that was, I don't want to say a surprise to me, but a little bit of a surprise, because if you know me, and then my husband, Blake, a lot of the times we're kind of opposite. And his personality is really like happy and carefree. Not that he doesn't, feel pressures or have responsibility, because he does, and he does a really good job at, providing. So it's not like he just ignores his responsibilities and his pressures, the pressure that he might have, but he doesn't let it weigh him down. And me, on the other hand, it's my tendency to kind of be a little bit more of a pessimist. It's harder for me to see the good in a circumstance than it is for him. And he's kind of often telling me, okay, well, let's look at this, and let's not think too much into this, and let's just see how it's going to work out. We know who God is, and he's going to see us through. And in my mind, I know that, because I know who God is, but sometimes it just takes me a little bit longer to get there initially than it does Blake. And so, when my manager was talking about how she likes the way I handle things, and it doesn't seem like things really stress me out, I thought, that's good. But I know that's God. I know that's God through me, because I know how I tend to lean in my flesh. And it makes me feel like, if knowing who I am and how it's a little bit easier for me to be a little down sometimes and just not be as happy about things. Good things I'm happy about, of course, but like sometimes I think, okay, well, this is going on and it's not good. Why am I gonna smile about that? I know that's my tendency, and so it's encouraging to me to know that, what, if I do put God first, and my prayer is, God, I want to be closer to you. I want my life to be the type of life that can point others to who you are, that will show them who you are. And if I know that that's my prayer, then it doesn't matter what I might lean towards in my flesh. God's light is going to shine through me. God's ways are going to be prominent, and that's encouraging. And so, just to recap a little bit, I want to just make sure everyone knows that as Christians, it's okay to sometimes say, yeah, this is a hard thing that I'm going through. But we also have to get to the point where we realize, yeah, you know what? Weeping may endure for the night, but God's joy comes in the morning. And I'm so thankful for his joy. I'm so thankful for the joy that he provides, because I can try to find joy myself and it's not going to work out. But when I have God's joy, when I allow his joy to penetrate my heart, to really get into my life, then others can see that, and that's when we're really going to make a difference. So I hope that this, encourages someone a little bit. I hope it wasn't too depressing, because yes, we are going to go through things, but his joy cometh in the morning. And so just want to thank you for taking the time to listen to my little bit of a message that I had on this Wednesday, and I pray that it would bless someone. And if there's anything that I said that was confusing, I do apologize. But God bless, and I hope you guys have a great evening.